A reading slump is a phase where you have little to no interest in reading. You'll probably start a couple of books, but you just can't seem to get into it and you're left feeling stuck. Reading slumps are so annoying because you might want to read, but everything seems to take your attention away from the words. And this past month, I have been in the worst reading slump ever, so let's get out of this reading slump together. I have been in this reading slump for a really long time. It has been at least a month long, maybe even longer. And I think I got into this reading slump because I just read too many books in a row where I didn't love. I honestly can't even remember the last time I rated a book 4 stars and above. So my plan to get out of this reading slump is to read books from my TBR that I think I will love and enjoy. And I thought it'd be good to start off with a lighter story, something that's not too dense, and a book from one of my favorite genres. And of course that genre is romance. It's actually the genre that got me started into reading. So based off my past experiences, I think picking up a romance right now will definitely help me get back into reading, or at least I hope it will. And I already know what book I want to start off with, and that book is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I've only read one book by Ali Hazelwood, and that is The Love Hypothesis, and I absolutely love that book so much. So picking up another book by Ali Hazelwood right now just feels right. This is another STEM romance. I've heard nothing but good things about this book, so I'm excited to get into it. I'm also currently reading One Dark Window on my Kindle. I'm about like 50 pages into this book. This book so far has been a slower read for me. It definitely took a bit of time to learn the characters and the world. Where I'm at right now in the book, the story is definitely picking up, but I wouldn't say I love the story yet. I like it enough to continue reading, but I just don't feel like I love it yet. So right now I'm gonna start with Love Theoretically, but I might switch between the two books throughout this reading vlog. We'll see how things go, but let's start with Love Theoretically.
Spring is the season that wakes me alive, and fall is the season to contemplate life. Oh.
Guys, the dedication of the book already has me. This is the dedication to all my readers from the AO3 days to where we are now. The Adam and Olive cameo is for you. For those of you who haven't read The Love Hypothesis yet, Adam and Olive are the couple in that book, and just finding out that Adam and Olive will make an appearance in this book, I already have a feeling that I'm gonna love this book a lot.
Salt, mist, and sea, sand and amber trees, 'cause it still feels like summer, but it's soaked in nostalgia slowly. All the leaves they're turning brown, 'cause it still feels like summer, and I simply don't wanna see the cold wind sneak back in our town. 'Cause we lived when it was all bare feet, tan skin glistening beneath the heat, evening swirl into a birdsong beat. God, it's now so very bittersweet, so I guess I'll just put on my favorite sweater and say goodbye to summer. I keep on forgetting times learn how to fly, and before I know it, it passes me by. Oh, I don't know why when life is beautiful I start to fear it'll slip through my fingers and just disappear.
Good morning, guys. It's a new day and I am starting off my morning with a matcha latte, and I made this using Magic Mind's productivity shots. I love using their shots to make my matcha because it's so easy to make and it also tastes really good. I also learned from Magic Mind that caffeine doesn't actually give you energy. It actually blocks the neuroreceptors that tell you you're tired, and when they unblock around 3 hours later, that's when you experience a caffeine crash, and that's why you usually feel sluggish and you feel like you need another coffee. I also learned that theanine is an ingredient in these matcha shots, and what it does is that it prevents a full blocking of the receptors, so it reduces the caffeine crash and the jitters you feel. With these shots, I usually get around 7 to 8 hours of productivity flow, so these mental performance shots from Magic Mind are so helpful right now because I really need to get on with the reading. So if you are looking for something to boost your cognition and energy and decrease your stress and procrastination, I recommend you to try these shots from Magic Mind. I will have the link to their website in my description box below. This is actually my second time getting one of these big packs from Magic Mind. In my opinion, I feel like these definitely help, and of course it just makes making matcha so much easier, because if you're a matcha lover like myself, you know that it's a lot of steps to make really good matcha at home, and a lot of the times I find that I don't have time in the morning to make good matcha, so these just make making matcha so much easier. I will have the link to their website in my description box below, and if you use use my code Rachelle20, you can get 20% off your first purchase. Anyways, let's get on with the reading. I have a few updates for you guys. I am now 179 pages into Love Theoretically, and I am loving it a lot. Our main characters are Elsie and Jack. Elsie lives a double life because by day she's a theoretical physicist and a professor at 3 different institutions, and by the other day she has a side hustle offering her services as a fake girlfriend, tapping into her people-pleasing skills so she can mold herself into the best fake girlfriend for her clients. It's actually a pretty sweet gig until she finds out that Jack and her lives kind of intersect in more ways than one, because not only is Jack the older brother of her favorite client, but he's also a cold-hearted experimental physicist who ruined her mentor's career and undermined theoretical physicists everywhere. He also happens to rule over the physics department at MIT, standing right in between Elsie and her dream job. So far, I am loving the tension between Elsie and Jack. Their banter is so entertaining, and whenever these two are in a room together, the story has my full attention. And I kind of just forget about the outside world, which is definitely a good thing because I can already feel myself getting out of this reading slump. I am also loving how relatable Elsie is because she's a people pleaser, and I hate to admit this myself, but I am also a people pleaser too. So I can understand where she's coming from and the choices she makes because of that. And I also find it funny how she almost always successfully molds herself into the person people want her to be, but the one person she can't fool is Jack because he somehow sees right through her. I just love how observant he is, and that right there is good boyfriend material. I also ended up reading more of One Dark Window, and I actually finished the book. This is a fantasy, and our main character is Elspeth. I might be butchering her name, but anyway. 11 years ago, Elspeth was struck with a magical infection carried by the mist in the woods. Because of that, she became magically gifted in a land where magic was only allowed if the magic came from these cards called Providence cards, and any magic used outside of these cards were punishable by death. Even worse though, her magic caused her to be bound to this dark spirit, one that has been slowly taking over her mind ever since. But then Elspeth meets a secret group that is trying to end the mist and its curse, and she realizes that her magic might be the key to help them complete their ritual. However, of course, all magic comes at a cost, and gaining the knowledge that she seeks might mean that her mind might be consumed by the spirit in her head. I had high expectations for this book. This book was rated so highly, and I thought I was gonna love this book, but unfortunately that's not true. I did enjoy reading this book, but I didn't love it. I found that it was hard to put together the story in the beginning because there were a lot of characters introduced all at once, and I was getting confused with who is who and where their loyalties lie, and because of that I had no connection to the characters. Therefore, I personally feel like the story had a weak build-up. I really wish they only introduced a couple characters at a time. Even as I kept reading, the main characters eventually became more clear, but the writing didn't feel engaging or special in any way, and I found myself getting disconnected from the story every so often. And also, this book is classified as a romantasy, and while there were scenes of the couple together and you can clearly see the affection they have for each other, I didn't feel their attraction develop. It kind of felt insta-lovey. I also didn't love the idea that magic came from these cards. Basically, each of these Providence cards has a special power, and you would tap the card 3 times to activate the power, and then you could use the magical power, and then you would tap it again 3 more times to deactivate it. It all just felt really weird to me, and I don't know why. And I thought if I kept reading I would get used to the idea, but I just never did. There's a 50-50 chance that I will recommend someone to read this book, so that's why I gave this book 3 stars. Anyway, for the rest of the day I'm not really doing anything, so I want to continue reading Love Theoretically, so I will see you guys when I'm ready to give my next update. Hi friends, it's now the next day and I'm here with another reading update for you guys. I'm not done the book yet, but I have about like 30 pages left to read. I think it's getting to the point where I'm getting a little obsessed with the story because I am soaking up every single word of this book. I've gotten to the Adam and Olive cameo, and let me just say I loved every minute of it. It was just such a nice throwback because Adam and Olive are 2 of my favorite characters ever, and I really like how they just seamlessly fit into the story. I also think I'm falling a little bit in love with Jack. He's says and does all the right things, and it's literally just green flags all around. Also, I truly appreciate how Ali Hazelwood doesn't make the science parts of the story super dense. I'm not a science person at all, so I like how she writes a story in a way that I'm still able to understand the physics parts without being a science person. This book did it. It got me out of a reading slump, and now I just want to read more books. I finished Love Theoretically the other day, and this book has me swooning and giggling out loud. I ended up really loving it, and it was just such a cute, funny, and wholesome romance. I finished this book so fast, and honestly, I think I would have finished it faster if I wasn't so busy with work. But Jack and Elsie were such likable characters. I actually found myself caring for them. I can't get over how Elsie really needed Jack to become a better version of herself. That is honestly what real love looks like in my opinion. Jack just became another one of my book boyfriends, and someone please tell me where I can find myself a Jack. I also really loved how I was actually able to learn something while I was reading this book. I was actually able to get a better understanding of what it's like to have diabetes because of course in this book Elsie does have diabetes, and while I can't confirm how accurate it is because of course this is a fictional story, I definitely think it was still nice to get a basic understanding of that condition. I definitely see myself revisiting this book in the future, and that is why I'm giving this book 4.5 stars. So I'm thinking about starting Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha Tooley. This is a fantasy and I think it has a little bit of romance in it. I'm not too sure, but this little blurb on the back of the book has my attention. It says, 10 women, a deadly contest. Only one can win the Sun King's heart. This just sounds like a thrilling and fun fantasy, and I think that's something I'm really in the mood to read right now. So let's continue reading now, and let's make sure that I don't get back into a reading slump. Hello friends, welcome to a new day. I haven't given you guys any updates on Trial of the Sun Queen yet, so I'm gonna do that right now. I'm currently 180 pages into this book, and it is a fantasy that follows this girl named Lore, and she has endured 12 long years of torment under the Aurora King's rule, but then she finally finds herself free from his captive, and she finds herself in the hands of the Sun King, where she becomes the final tribute of the Sun Queen trials. And of course, because she is now in the Sun Queen trials, she will compete with 9 other women in a series of trials to win over the Sun King's heart and become his queen. This is a dual POV story. We read from Lore's perspective, and we also read from Nadir's POV, and he is the son of the Aurora King. So far, this book has me a little bit confused because we learn about how Lore became the final tribute of the Sun Queen trials from a conversation she has with the Sun King. However, it conflicts with what we learned about the Aurora King and what goes on in his land. So something fishy is going on here, and I really want to get to the bottom of it. Also, I find that the writing of this book isn't super gripping. It kind of feels like it had a weak beginning into the story, but I am still definitely entertained enough to keep reading. I honestly don't know how I feel about this book yet, but I do know that I'm having really mixed feelings about it.
Falling to pieces in my room. Are you coming over? That's cool. I could use a little something to do.
Okay friends, it is the next day, and I've read about a few of the trials already, and I'm currently in the middle of the 3rd trial right now, and I must say this book has definitely picked up for me. I am definitely enjoying it a lot more than I did when I first started this book, but I already know that this book isn't going to be one of my 5-star reads because I'm not a huge fan of the character development, and character development is something that's so important to me in any book. This book centers around the trials and all the women competing in it. However, I feel like the development of the tributes just fell a little flat. We really didn't get to know them all that well, so it was kind of hard to form an attachment to any of them. But something big just happened, and I really want to keep reading right now because I want answers. I have less than 100 pages left to read, so let's finish this book. Okay friends, it is now a few hours later, and I just finished Trial of the Sun Queen. I enjoyed this book for the most part, but it wasn't my favorite romantasy, but I did like it enough that I'm going to continue the rest of the series. I actually had high hopes for this book, so if I'm going to be honest, I was a little disappointed by it. I mentioned a little bit earlier that the character development felt a little flat for me, but I also don't think the world building was very strong either. We really didn't get a backstory or any kind of information about the world. So from the beginning, I was really confused and I had a lot of questions, and I was hoping by the end of the book those questions would be answered, but they weren't. After finishing this book, I am still a little bit confused about the world, and the ending of this story was also a cliffhanger. I can understand why the author wrote it this way because it gives us a reason to pick up the next book, but I still think she could have given us more answers in this first book. It's almost as if I feel obligated to read the second book just to get those answers instead of just wanting to read the next book, because I enjoyed everything from this book and I just want to see where the story goes from here. Also, the writing and the narration of this book felt a little bit off to me. It just didn't flow nicely and it didn't feel very captivating, especially for a fantasy. It wasn't terrible by any means, but the writing just didn't feel special. Overall though, all the trials were so fun to read about, but I definitely feel like this book could have been stronger. I ended up giving this book 3.75 stars. Anyway though, I think I'm gonna end this reading vlog here. In total, I read 3 books and I definitely got out of this massive reading slump that I was in, which I'm so happy about, and I'm hoping that I don't fall back into a reading slump anytime soon. I'm really hoping that I can just continue reading book after book after book. I definitely think that productivity shot from Magic Mind that I took earlier today helped a lot. It is actually my 7th day taking these shots, and I definitely noticed an increase in my energy level, and of course I also feel so much more productive than I did before. If I'm gonna be completely honest, I definitely think I was only able to finish this book today because of these productivity shots. Before I go though, if you guys haven't checked out Magic Mind's productivity shots yet, I will have the link to their website in my description box below. And if you use my code Rachelle20, you can get 20% off your first purchase. And with that, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!
Pull the key out the ignition. Run your mouth but I never listen. You hold me back, will never last. Keep talking all your shit. Wondering how all this started. You left me broken hearted. You flip my words, yeah, this love hurts. Keep talking all your shit.